couple weeks ago, I made a video comparing Mario 64's Jolly Roger Bay and Dire Dire Docks. While those levels aren't good, I still thought they more than justified their individual existences. Despite both being water levels, they have a lot of different content. Jolly Roger Bay has a much more eerie atmosphere, and the stars do a good job reflecting that. On the other hand, Dire Dire Docks is reflected well with its stars because both the level and stars are god-awful. But if you remember at the start of that video, I said that there were two other levels that shared a theme with one another that I thought would be fun to compare. Those two levels were Cool Cool Mountain and Snowman's Land, which act as Mario 64's snow stages. Welcome to another episode of Level by Level. Today we've got ourselves another comparison episode, though this one is a bit more interesting to me because I genuinely don't know which of these stages I like better. In my mind, they've both been very similar quality-wise, so my hope for this video is to finally find out which of these stages I actually like best. Just like the last comparison, we'll also try to determine if these two levels are different enough to justify taking up two different spots. We'll be analyzing these levels through three different categories: aesthetic, layout, and then we'll end with a tier list of all 14 stars shared between these levels. So if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and let's jump right in. So unlike the water episode, we're actually going to start a bit negative in the aesthetic department. That's because Cool Cool Mountain and Snowman's Land really do not do a lot to differentiate themselves from one another. I mean, I could summarize both of their aesthetics by saying it looks very chilly. Really, it's the layout that makes both of these two levels stand out from one another, because just looking at them visually, they honestly seem like they are part of the same level. Now that's not to say there aren't any differences. Cool Cool Mountain, of course, has the cottage, and Snowman's Land has a freezing river going through it. But let's just compare that to how different Jolly Roger Bay and Dire Dire Docks were. The water itself changes between the two levels to give off a very different feel. Add on that both Cool Cool Mountain and Snowman's Land share a song, and there's really nothing separating the two in a general aesthetic sense. With that being said, I do still really like how both of these levels look and sound. I'm always sort of a sucker for snow stages. Ignore the first level I love. The bright white of the snow really makes a level pop out, and I of course love the ice thrown into the mix as well. Both levels also have NPCs in the form of penguins, which really adds some nice life to these stages. Most other levels don't have non-enemy characters to populate their world, so it makes me appreciate seeing the penguins here a lot more. Although that non-enemy part is questionable, this penguin definitely tries to ruin your day. And of course the song is great too. While not quite as good as the water levels, this song fits perfectly with the snowy atmosphere of both stages and feels as jolly as can be. So even though I do think these levels failed when it came to distinct aesthetics, I do like the one that they share, which helps them overall be better levels. But now we can actually get to some differences here with the layout, and luckily this doesn't disappoint. Honestly, I would say these levels are sort of opposites when it comes to how they were constructed, so let's start with Cool Cool Mountain. This actually has a pretty unique structure compared to most other stages. While most of the time you start at the lowest point of the level and have to try and climb upward, Cool Cool Mountain actually starts you at the top of the mountain, with many of its objectives requiring you to climb down. I think that's a really fun idea to spruce up the general level layout, and it makes traversing this stage quite different from the rest. You have multiple different options on how you can descend to the bottom here. Of course, you could always do the classic jump off a high ledge to your death. If Mario jumped off a cliff, I would do it too. Most players that aren't insane though will take one of this level's many built-in paths downward. From the start of the level, you have the choice to go left, straight, or to the right. Going through the left path will have you go down a slide, which I think is a really fun way to begin the stage. It's always fun to try and collect as many coins as you can while going as fast as possible. There isn't much to actually explore on the slide itself, but it's just fun to go down fairly quickly. Once you reach the bottom of the slide, you haven't quite reached the bottom of the mountain though. You're given a spot to rest and explore for a second. You can go over and grab this one up near some spin drifts, but besides that, there's not too much else to do here. If we continue our journey back down to the bottom of the mountain, we're given another split path. We could choose to go on this lift. Never mind, it's not here. So the actual way we're gonna have to go is by crossing the bridge with some snowmen. This always annoyed me growing up because these snowmen were always super slow and you had to crawl under them in order to get past the bridge without damage. Once you reach the end of this bridge, you have the choice to jump across to where the red coin star spawns or continue to the bottom of the mountain down some ramps. Be careful though, there are some more evil snowmen. Woo! But finally, that brings us to the bottom. This gives us a nice little area to explore with a few red coins, a penguin, and access to the cannon, which we need for one of the stars. Now, of course, that was just one way down the mountain. Like I said, there are two other ways we could go at the start. If we go straight, we can go inside the cabin, but I'm going to talk more about that in the star section, so sorry, no spoilers. The final path we have to go down is the right, which brings us to a broken bridge. It's like it's calling to me to jump off. While it may seem like there's nothing here, if you stand at the very edge of the bridge for a moment, it's actually revealed to be a warp, which will quickly get you down to the bottom. So I think Cool Cool Mountain executed its descent theme extremely well. I find myself switching between the three options often, as they all have their different trade-offs. Oh, and of course I love jumping off too. But how does the layout of Snowman's Land compare? Well, this is a much simpler level in terms of its idea. It's pretty much back to the basic start at the bottom and make your way up a hill. Well, I say hill, but we're really climbing up a snowman. Look at that cute face. Essentially, the rest of the level sort of orbits around the giant snowman in the center, which gives us plenty of areas to explore. Before we get to the level itself though, I do want to mention how you get into it in the first place. In the upstairs of the castle, there's this mirror room that reflects everything inside. He's right behind me, isn't he? While this is a perfect reflection, even including the Lakitu bro holding the camera, you may notice one difference being the snow painting in the mirror that isn't in the room. Well, that's actually supposed to be a hint because jumping at the wall where the painting should be reveals the stage, which I think is a really cute puzzle. Anyway, the opening gives us a fittingly fairly open area to run around with a few enemies and an ice maze to the left of us. Going right also gives us plenty of open area to run around in, but the terrain is a lot more broken up and there's even some wind. Continuing around the snowman, we encounter this level's first bit of water. Now this is important to mention because the water here actually has unique properties compared to normal water. In fact, there are actually two different types of water in this level. The first here is underneath the bully.
Why are you blue?
And if you decide to take a dip inside the water, Mario will bounce off of it just like he would with lava. That's definitely a funny little surprise and fits well with the bully fight we'll talk about later. The other type of water comes at the last section at the base of the snowman. Going inside of it will seem okay at first, but as you stay inside, Mario will slowly take damage due to how frigid it is. This plays a part in making a few stars more tricky, so we'll see it again very soon. But now it's time to climb up the snowman itself, which is notably a lot harder than some of the other mountains in the game to climb up. Taking Bob-omb Battlefield for example, you have a ton of space to run around as you make your way to the top. The snowman on the other hand is made up of very small and skinny pathways, which definitely make it a lot more of a challenge. While on your way up though, you'll also see this level's igloo. Like the slide in Cool Cool Mountain, this acts as an indoors area to run around and collect a star in, which I think adds a significant amount to the stage. But for the sake of not spoiling the star tier list, I think that's gonna wrap up the layout section. As we can see, both Cool Cool Mountain and Snowman's Land take a very different philosophy for how their courses are designed. Cool Cool Mountain contains everything on a descent down the mountain, while Snowman's Land has everything orbiting around a giant centerpiece. So even though aesthetically these really could be differentiated more, I think the layouts themselves do a good job in this department. But now it's time for everyone's favorite section, the star tier list. This is really going to be how we determine which of these two stages I actually find to be better. So I think we should just jump into Cool Cool Mountain. Star number 1, slip sliding away. As soon as we enter the stage for the first time, the game literally tells us directly to go into the cottage, so it makes sense that the first star is going to be the one contained inside. By following the coin trail down the chimney, we get dropped into a small room. Turning the camera reveals that in front of us though is a massive ice cavern with a giant ice slide inside. That makes it pretty clear that if you want to collect this level's star, you have to do your best to survive this. Unlike Princess Peach's secret slide, this is pretty much no guardrails at the side at all, and if you combine that with the slippery ice, it's very easy to fall off here to your death. The slide is made even more difficult by the fact that it's extremely twisty, so you have to make sure that your control of Mario is perfect. Luckily though, you can be a baby here and take as much time as you want to get down to the bottom. You are forced to keep moving forward while sliding, but by holding back, you can slow down enough to make it a bit easier to control. But slowing down is for losers. How can we speed this up? Well, due to how open the slide is, you can in theory jump from the very top of the room all the way down to the bottom. While you may think that'd make this star too cheesable, I'd actually argue it's really nice since the jump down can be very difficult to aim. The slide overlaps a lot at points as well, so you may end up landing around the middle instead of right at the end. If you decide to stay on the slide itself though, there's actually a built-in shortcut. While going down, you may see the suspicious little coin trail pointing toward a wall. If you choose to follow it, you'll find that there's a secret tunnel which leads you directly to the end of the slide, which I think is a really cool addition for repeat playthroughs. But once you finally do reach the finish line of the course, you'll be able to exit the cottage to receive this star. I think this was a really great way to start off the level. It's fairly challenging and it's great on repeat playthroughs due to the numerous shortcuts. So for that, I've got to give this a very strong A tier. Star number 2, Lil Penguin Lost. At the end of the first star, you may have noticed a giant penguin crying at the bottom of the mountain. Well, if you wanted to get it to shut up, you'll have to complete its task, but that first requires figuring out what that task actually is. So you have to make your way down to the bottom of the mountain again, and like I said in the layout section, there are plenty of ways to do this. Since I enjoy basically going down all paths, I really appreciate how many options we have here. When you get to the bottom, you'll discover that the giant penguin is actually a mom who somehow lost her child, and you have to try and bring them back to her. Nearby the mother penguin, you'll be able to find a baby which you can pretty easily grab and then walk back down with. Oh, I guess this isn't the penguin's baby and it's just some random child. Useless baby. Okay, so if that wasn't the correct child, then who is? Well, you may remember that there is another baby penguin at the very top of the mountain right next to the entrance to the cottage. So by making your way back up to the top with the warp, it's time to try and find a way back down to the bottom with the baby in hand. I think this star does a really good job showing off this level's strength of its layout. While you can't use the cottage or warp with the baby in hand, you still have a few options on how you can get the baby down to the bottom. The one I imagine most people will use is the slide, which can be kind of scary to go down as falling can cause Mario to drop the penguin. Once you reach the bottom, you then have to cross the bridge with the snowman on top. You have to make sure to be very careful here because getting hit by the enemies will cause you to drop the penguin. But once you do that, you can finally reach the mother and return the penguin. Now technically that's not the full story here because there's actually a secret thing you can do. Why take the bridge at all when we can just jump down? Now it may seem like this gap is too massive, but slide down the slope in just the right way and you can get enough speed to actually clear the gap. You can extend this all the way to the very top of the mountain. By jumping off right here, you can chain several slope slides together, which is a bit difficult, yes, but it's so much fun and a lot faster than the other methods. Just like the slide star, I appreciate how many options you're given to complete this as it makes many playthroughs of this star super fun. Once you reach the bottom of the mountain, you can finally return the baby to its mother and spawn in the star. Although nothing is stopping you from picking the baby back up after, so bye bye loser. I really love this star. Not only does it have a ton of of different routes, but it's also unique from anything else in the game. It's also just one of the most iconic as well, so I see absolutely no reason to not put this up in S tier. We're 2 for 2 in Great Cool Mountain stars so far, so let's see if the streak can continue. Star number 3, Big Penguin Race. To complete the star, we actually have to return back into the cottage. When we do so, we'll discover that there's now another penguin inside, which will actually challenge us to a race. Our goal is to simply reach the bottom of the slide before he does. While sure, having to go down the same slide twice does make it become slightly more repetitive, I would say this star is different enough to make it worthwhile. This star is significantly harder than the first. Not only can you not take your time, but you also have to deal with a fat penguin trying to murder you by pushing you off a cliff. What also makes this more difficult is the fact that you can't take any shortcuts because the penguin will start crying saying you cheated. The penguin is also really fast, so this star is honestly a pretty good challenge. So yeah, while this is sort of repeated content, I think this takes a good spin on it, so I'll put it right next to the original in A tier. If there was only one slide star, it might have been S tier, but 2 A tier stars is certainly nothing to be upset about. Before we move on, I also want to mention that this star has a really cute Easter egg. After collecting all 120 stars, you can return back to the cottage to discover that the penguin is now extra wide, saying he gained a bit of weight. That makes rematching him here much more of a challenge since he takes up more track space. I'm pretty sure this is the only star to change after collecting 120 stars, so I think that's pretty neat. Star number 4, Frosty Slide for 8 red coins. Every level in this game has a red coin star, so how does Cool Mountain use the concept? There are 2 approaches most stages take to these stars. Either they have the 8 coins confined to one area, or spread across the entire stage, and Cool Mountain takes the latter approach. I usually prefer this approach because it gives us an excuse to explore the entire level, and I think that's done fairly well here. The first coin is super obvious, being on top of the tree at the very start. I mean, you can literally see it every single time you spawn into the stage. To get the rest of the coins, we'll need to descend down the mountain, so after taking the slide, we can see another coin right when it comes to an end. Before going down the lift, there's also a red coin hiding in this bit of land. Once you reach the very bottom of the level, there are 3 more coins to collect. One is on a tree, another is on these bridges floating over the void, and the final one is sneaking off in this back corner. That one can be especially scary to grab due to the slippery physics, which could send you flying off if you aren't careful. That leaves us with just 2 more coins, which are a bit more hidden than the other 6. By looking around the stage, you may be able to notice this little platform with a giant icicle on it that you don't normally have to go onto. It's pretty disconnected from any other path, so it can be a bit challenging to get. I usually just jump off, but you can also use the cannon to shoot up to the platform as well. As for the final red coin, it's located behind the Snowman bridge, which I always save for last as the red coin star spawns on the other side of this broken bridge. That means collecting the coin while long jumping always feels really good, so overall this is a pretty solid red coin star. I'd say everything is spread across the level pretty nicely. I think I'll put this up in B tier. Star number 5, Snowman's lost his head. Alright, I think I've been a bit too positive this video. It's time to take a look at a star that I have despised ever since I was a little baby Odyssey playing this for the first time. Wait, Odyssey wasn't even out yet. When I was a little baby funny dude 1562. At the top of the mountain, you may notice a snowball on a platform next to the slide. If you walk up next to it, you'll discover that the snowball is somehow able to talk, and it says it wants a head. Luckily for this snowball, there just so happens to be one at the very bottom of the slide, so you just have to lead the way down. By going down the slide and waiting by the platform at the bottom, the snowball connects with the head and you're given a star. Or are you? See, that's what's supposed to happen, but for some reason this star breaks for me all the time and I have no clue why. Maybe I'm just going down the slide too fast or incorrectly, but the snowball will sometimes just move right past the head and it's kind of annoying. But add on that there's some waiting involved with the star even when it does work, and I think that honestly makes me want to put it in F tier. It adds no interesting content since you can take this same slide for many other stars. I'm sure people will disagree with me on this, but I've just never liked this thing. Star number 6, wall kicks will work. Of the 6 made stars, this is definitely the one that's in the most obscure location. By now you've pretty much explored everywhere there is to go on the main mountain, so where could the star be? Well, if you ever got bored spinning the camera around on the lift, you may have noticed this little section that goes underneath the main mountain. Since that's the only place we haven't gone to, it's safe to say the star is probably located there, but the question then becomes, how do we get to that strip of land? Well, the most obvious solution would be the cannon, so we first have to unlock it by talking to the pink bomb, which is on this really tiny floating island. Once that's done, you then have to try and aim the perfect shot to actually land on this area. Luckily, there is a tree over there, which I personally like to use to aim at. Down in this area, you can collect a few coins and then run past a few spin drifts. To get the star though, you have to go across this very skinny platform, which can be pretty scary. After long jumping across this gap, we finally made it to the main challenge of the star itself. Before getting to that though, I should also mention that you can get down here by just jumping off the mountain, which is really fun to do. It can be hard since it's a bit blind, but it's much faster than going the cannon route. Anyway, we can see the star hiding at the top of this alcove, but we have to try and find a way to get up. Luckily, there are platforms here, but there's no clear way to get up them. That's where the name of the star comes in. Wall kicks will work. Since the edges of the platforms are near walls, you actually have to wall jump off of them in order to reach the next layer up. I think that's pretty cool, especially since wall jumps aren't required much throughout the game. Even with the knowledge that you have to use wall jumps, the platforming can still be a bit of a challenge as the wall is a bit high up, so I recommend triple jumping and then wall jumping after. Once you get up to that final layer, you can pretty easily nab the star. I think this was a fairly solid platforming challenge, and it's hidden pretty well too. I'll give this a B tier once again, just above the red coin star. Star number 7, 100 coins. Every main stage of the game has a star where you have to collect 100 coins, which are always hard to judge since the coins collected will differ for everyone. As I'm sure you can tell throughout this video, I really like having multiple options, so 100 coin stars are often some of my favorites. Except in the water levels, we don't talk about those. Cool Mountain has a very good coin count with a total of 154 coins. That gives you plenty of options. Heck, you can even entirely miss the blue coin switch here and still collect the star. Running and sliding around to collect all these coins is a blast, but unfortunately, I do think the star has a pretty glaring issue. A lot of this level's coins are located on the slide within the cottage, so you're very likely to visit it when doing the star. However, if you hit 100 coins while on the slide and you miss the star, you basically have to start all over again. You may think you could just go inside the cottage again, but leaving and returning unfortunately despawns the star from existence. I'm sure numerous players have accidentally locked themselves out of collecting the star, which is a pretty big problem. Still though, I generally have fun collecting this, so I think I'm gonna put it as a high C tier. But now it's time we switch over to our second stage, Snowman's Land. Cool Mountain stars were generally pretty strong, so let's see how this level compares. Star number 1, Snowman's Big Head. You didn't have to do him like that, come on now. This is a great star to start us off with because it takes us all around the level to the very top of the snowman's head. This lets us see a lot of the sites I mentioned in the layout section, which we'll get a more in-depth view of when we get to the other stars. I'd say the challenge for this star really starts at the cold pond here, as you have to actually make your way up onto the snowman itself. To get up there, we have to go past this obstacle which constantly shoots out large chunks of ice towards us at varying heights. While the ice chunks just push you, they can actually be dangerous as they put you into the cold water. Also, sometimes the game just breaks and they randomly kill you. What the? I do think this is a pretty good obstacle. I like that it pretty much requires a double jump to get over too. Once on the snowman itself, you have to go up several fairly skinny pathways, which isn't too bad as long as you don't run off like an idiot. Eventually though, you'll reach the star's main highlight where you have to go face to face with the giant snowman. Since he is so giant, he thinks Mario is some sort of bug, so for the entire time Mario's walking across this bridge, he's trying to blow you off. The bridge is too long to just jump over the wind, so how do we get through this? Well, lucky for us, there's a penguin walking around up here, and we can clearly see that he's unaffected by the wind. So if we stand next to him, we can use him as a shield to stay on. That's easier said than done though, because this penguin is evil. Instead of just walking straight back and forth, he'll randomly change directions, so you have to be locked in and ready to follow his movements. This is also made more difficult by the fact that this is an ice bridge, which can cause us to easily slip past the penguin. All of this makes the bridge here a pretty good challenge, and one you'll definitely want to pass since getting blown off puts you back at the very start of the level and takes off Mario's hat. One technique you can do to survive this is actually climb on top of the penguin. It's really hard to do, but if you manage to stay on, you'll be able to safely cross no matter what wacky movement the penguin decides to do. Once you do finally make it to the other side, you just have to climb up to the top of the head for the star. Overall, I think this was a great start to the level. It allows us to see many of the locations and is a pretty unique challenge. I'll put this up in A tier right below the slides. Star number 2, Chill with the Bully. On the way up to the snowman, you may have noticed a special ice bully above the lava water. Well, just like the bullies in Lethal Lava Land, you have to push this guy into the liquid below to defeat him. Don't be fooled by his icy appearance, he's literally the exact same functionally as a big bully, but I do appreciate them going through the effort of making an aesthetic tweak here. Unfortunately though, this fight is extremely easy. Even with the icy surface, it's not hard to ground pound once or twice and send him plummeting into the water. Heck, honestly, the icy surface makes this easier since you could just dive him across the entire platform. So yeah, I think I have to give this star C tier. It's not a bad star, but it's a bit too easy and very similar to other stars seen in Lethal Lava Land. Star number 3, In the Deep Freeze. By going to the left at the start instead of right, we'll find this really weird ice block structure. Since the ice is see-through, we can clearly see the star on the inside. The only question is, how do we get to it? There are several entrances thrown around the structure, so it acts sort of like a really compact maze. Eventually, after trying every entrance, you may be able to find a way to the top of the ice block, which reveals a path to get the star. Yeah, so this is super quick. It might even be the fastest star to collect in the entire game, since you could just triple jump to the top on repeat playthroughs. I will say that does make this kind of a weak star, but at least it had a solid idea behind it, so I think I can give it C tier. Even if it is more unique than Star 2, I think fighting the bully is more fun on a second playthrough, so I'm giving it the edge. Star number 4, Whirl from the Freezing Pond. The name obviously indicates that the star is located somewhere around the water area, but where are we supposed to go from here? Well, you may be able to see some exclamation mark blocks across the water, but they're put behind a wall that is just too tall for Mario to jump over. Well, that's where the whirl part of the title comes in, as we can see a few spin drift inside the water. As we've seen before, jumping on one of these enemies will cause Mario to jump up super high and then spin, having him descend slower than normal. So our goal for this star is to jump on one of these two so we can get the higher spin jump. That can be kind of tricky though because the spin drift are moving, and since they're in the freezing pond, you will take damage if you miss. I think all of this comes together to create a really fun and unique challenge. There really isn't any other stars that require you to use enemies in a platforming challenge like this. Once you make it across, you can hit the block and receive your star. I think I'm actually a fan of this one. It's got a good concept and it's fairly well executed. You can even take an alternate but much harder route if you accidentally kill all the spin drift by jumping up this hill. I think all of that makes the star deserve to place just below Cool Mountain's red coin star in B tier. Star number 5, Shell Shredding for red coins. While collecting some of the other stars, you may have noticed that some of this level's red coins are on top of the lava water. How are you supposed to grab those? Well, the title of the star answers that question, as shells allow you to safely travel over lava, somehow. But then the next question becomes, where are we going to get a shell? I mean, there's no Koopa in this stage, so we have to find it in a block somewhere. Well, the placement of this star in the list is actually a pretty helpful hint too, with it coming directly after Whirl from the freezing pond. The player will know that there's a few boxes across the water, and as it turns out, one of them does indeed contain a shell. We can see where to go immediately, as there's a red coin pointing toward a secret path out the side of this little area. Be careful while going across this though, as a snowman will try and jump scare you. If you run into them, the shell will get destroyed, but we need them intact in order to collect the coins over the lava. Now, one thing I don't like about this star is the fact that 4 of the red coins are just in a straight line here. That does feel a bit lazy, because they could have spread them out more, but regardless, what about the other 4 coins? Well, jumping off this path places us pretty much right on top of coin 5, and we can see that 2 of the remaining coins are those lava ones I mentioned before. That just leaves one last coin, but it's not too hidden, as it's just in the corner directly in front of you after getting out of the water. So yeah, the red coins are probably a bit too easy to find for my liking, but I can't lie, this is still a pretty fun star. I love surfing around on the shell, so even if the coins could have been placed better, this star definitely still earns a B tier, just below Whirl from the freezing pond. Star number 6, Into the Igloo. Gee, I wonder where we have to go for this star. Yeah, so we finally get to go into the small igloo on the side of the snowman. First off, I think it's really cute that we have to crawl to get inside. The crawl move is basically not utilized at all in the game, so at least it has to be used in this star. Going inside the igloo reveals a whole new area, which I think is a great set piece. Once you turn the camera to face the main area, you'll see that the star is floating inside an ice block above you, so now we have to try and find some way to get it. The rest of the igloo is set up to be a maze with several snow and ice walls blocking your path. You also have to be careful of Goombas inside, as they are the most deadly enemies in the entire game. Eventually, as you make your way through the igloo, you'll discover that the pink bomb is located behind an ice wall. It appears to be completely enclosed, but the snow here actually doesn't connect to the side wall, so you can just barely squeeze through to get him. Unlocking the cannon isn't helpful for this star, or really any star, but I thought I should mention him while we're here. What we'll really want for the igloo star is the vanish cap in the other corner of the room. Once again though, the block seems to be completely enclosed, but this time one of the ice walls doesn't quite reach the ceiling, so you can jump through the gap and collect the cap. Now, it may seem sort of pointless, but you'll soon discover that the vanish cap actually lets you run through ice walls. Not only does that let you collect a bunch of coins, but also of course the star at the top of the room. I really enjoyed this star. Not only does it bring us into a unique location, but it utilizes one of the game's cap power-ups really well, which we haven't seen at all in this video yet. Come to think of it, I don't think Cool Mountain has a single cap block. Well anyway, this star is really strong, so I think it belongs up in A tier. Star number 7, 100 coins. Alright, so how does this stack up to Cool Mountain's version of the star? Well, for starters, the stage has a little less coins with a grand total of 125. Oh no, wait, sorry, 126. I can't forget about the impossible coin. So yeah, that does technically give us less options to Cool Mountain, but this total is still plenty, so I'm not holding it against this level at all. Honestly, I think the coins themselves are a bit more fun to collect here. That in large part comes down to the fact that we can use the shell, so we can breeze through the level while killing enemies and collecting a lot of coins. I also think this level might just be the best usage of a sub area in any 100 coin star. I mentioned how the slide was pretty problematic for Cool Mountain because spawning the star on the slide could make it really tough to collect, but the igloo doesn't have that problem since you aren't forced to constantly move forward. Sure, the star does still despawn if you leave the igloo before collecting it, but just don't do that. The fact that you can even leave the igloo is also greatly appreciated. Other sub areas like the volcano and Lethal Lava Land or Shifting Sandlands Pyramid don't let you leave once you're inside. That means you could end up going in with too few coins and be just short of 100 after collecting everything inside, forcing you to restart. You don't have to worry about that at all with the igloo, which makes this a fantastic 100 coin star in my opinion. I'm putting this straight up into A tier just below Cool Mountain slide stars. But there we have it, the star tier list is officially complete, and by looking at the rankings, I think Cool Mountain is just able to sneak above Snowman's Land as the better snow stage for me. It just has higher peaks, but it's also worth noting that I don't think Snowman's Land has a bad star like Snowman Lost His Head. I think the two stages are still very close quality wise, but as of this video, I think I'm going to be saying that I slightly prefer Cool Mountain. The important question is though, do I think these two levels are different enough to justify being separate stages? While the aesthetic did give us a questionable start, I would say overall yes, these are different enough from one another to both be in the game. None of the stars between the two levels are similar to one another, even stuff like the red coin stars were drastically different in how they had to be collected. The format of the levels is also quite different, which makes exploring the two completely separate experiences. So with that being said, where do I think these belong in the level by level Mario 64 tier list? I'm thinking right at the top of A tier. These are both very strong contenders, and I would not blame anyone for saying these are their favorite Mario 64 levels. But anyways, that's it for this video. Do you really love Moneybags and hate me for not mentioning the one in Snowman's Land? Let me know in the comments. I was honestly not expecting this comparison to be as long as it was, but I had a really fun time with this episode. I really want to thank you all on the support for the Mario 64 videos recently. For some reason, the Wet Dry World episode blew up in the algorithm, and it's given me a lot more drive to make videos on this game, even if they usually get views a bit slower. But anyways, I gotta work on the 200k special, so dry bones for Smash, and I'll see you guys next time.